Writing. The bright afternoon sun reflected off the glass towers of downtown Chicago, turning every window into a mirror of success. Luxury cars lined the entrance of the prestigious Horizon Tech Summit, where some of the world's most powerful innovators had gathered. Reporters crowded the sidewalks, cameras flashing non-stop. But among all the excitement, one event had captured everyone's attention. 5 of the biggest technology companies in America had failed. Not failed at building software. Not failed at creating artificial intelligence. They had failed at something much simpler. A car. A one-of-a-kind Bugatti worth millions sat motionless in front of hundreds of spectators. Its owner, billionaire CEO Grayson Vale, stood nearby with growing frustration written across his face. Engineers from 5 different tech giants had spent nearly 3 hours examining the vehicle. They connected laptops. They ran diagnostics. They checked sensors, software, and hardware. Yet the car remained silent. And then a tired single father wearing a faded work shirt walked forward. 5 minutes later, the Bugatti roared to life. Before we begin this unforgettable story, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom Story House if you believe kindness, humility, and second chances can change someone's life. Stories like this remind us that true value isn't always found in expensive suits or famous titles. The man who stepped forward that afternoon was named Colton Reese. At first glance, nobody paid attention to him. His boots were dusty. His shirt carried traces of grease from a long day of work. His pickup truck parked across the street looked older than many of the interns attending the summit. But Colton wasn't there for the conference. He was there because his 8-year-old daughter, Harper, loved watching exotic cars. Every Saturday, no matter how difficult life became, Colton tried to find a small adventure for her. Sometimes it was feeding ducks at a local pond. Sometimes it was sharing a single ice cream cone in the park. And sometimes it was simply standing outside events where beautiful cars appeared. Since his wife had passed away 4 years earlier after a sudden illness, Colton had become both father and mother to Harper. Every morning began before sunrise. He packed lunches, helped with homework, worked long hours as a mechanic, cooked dinner, and somehow still found energy to smile for his daughter. Money was always tight. Bills arrived faster than paychecks. The roof leaked whenever it rained. The old pickup constantly needed repairs. Yet Harper never complained. She believed her father could fix anything. To her, he wasn't a struggling mechanic. He was a hero. That afternoon, while crowds gathered around the disabled Bugatti, Harper sat on a nearby bench eating a sandwich Colton had packed. The engineers continued working. Minutes became hours. News crews began filming the unusual situation. People whispered that perhaps the car's advanced systems had failed completely. Others joked that maybe technology had finally become too complicated for its own creators. Grayson Vale grew increasingly irritated. As founder of one of the largest technology corporations in the world, he wasn't used to hearing the words, "We can't figure it out." Yet those were exactly the words he kept hearing. The engineers eventually stepped back. Some blamed software. Others suspected electrical failure. One team suggested transporting the vehicle to a specialized facility. Nobody had an answer. Colton watched quietly from the edge of the crowd. Years of repairing vehicles had taught him something important. Sometimes people overcomplicate simple problems. He studied the Bugatti from a distance. Something felt wrong. Not complicated. Just wrong. Harper noticed her father's expression immediately. She always could. She smiled and pointed toward the car. The little gesture reminded Colton of something his wife used to say. "Trust what your hands know." Those words stayed with him. After a moment, he approached the security barrier. At first, several people laughed. A few executives exchanged amused looks. One reporter even raised an eyebrow. Compared to the engineers surrounding the vehicle, Colton looked completely out of place. But he politely asked if he could take a look. The request sparked more laughter. Yet Grayson Vale, exhausted from hours of failure, finally shrugged. At that point, he had nothing to lose. Colton knelt beside the Bugatti. He didn't open a laptop. He didn't connect diagnostic equipment. Instead, he listened. He examined a few components. He noticed something others had overlooked. A tiny connector hidden beneath a protective cover had shifted slightly during transportation earlier that morning. It wasn't broken. It wasn't defective. It simply wasn't seated correctly. The issue prevented communication between two critical systems. 3 minutes later, Colton adjusted the connector. 2 minutes after that, the engine exploded to life with a powerful growl. The entire street fell silent. Then came the sound nobody expected. Applause. Hundreds of people erupted in cheers. Reporters rushed forward. Engineers stared in disbelief. The Bugatti stood running perfectly. And the man who fixed it simply wiped his hands on a rag and stepped back. For a few moments, Grayson Vale said nothing. He looked at the vehicle. Then at Colton. Then back at the vehicle. Years of success had surrounded him with experts carrying degrees from elite universities. Yet this ordinary mechanic had solved the problem faster than all of them combined. The billionaire offered Colton a reward. But Colton politely declined. He explained that he had only helped because someone needed help. Nothing more. That answer surprised Grayson even more than the repair itself. Most people sought money. Recognition. Opportunity. Colton asked for none of it. Instead, he returned to Harper and prepared to leave. Yet Grayson couldn't stop thinking about him. Something about the encounter stayed in his mind. Perhaps it was the humility. Perhaps it was the quiet confidence. Or perhaps it was the realization that genuine expertise often hides where nobody bothers to look. A week later, Grayson tracked down Colton's small repair shop. The building stood between an abandoned warehouse and a convenience store. The paint peeled from the walls. The equipment was old. The waiting area contained mismatched chairs. But every vehicle inside was being repaired with remarkable care. Customers greeted Colton by name. Families trusted him. Elderly residents recommended him. The billionaire spent hours observing. What he saw changed him. Colton treated every customer with respect regardless of income. He explained repairs honestly. He never charged for unnecessary work. When someone couldn't afford a repair, he often found a solution anyway. That evening, Grayson learned something else. The repair shop was months away from closing. Rising expenses and declining business had pushed Colton to the edge. He had hidden the truth from Harper because he didn't want her to worry. For the first time in years, Grayson felt ashamed. He had spent millions building technologies designed to improve lives. Yet a man with far fewer resources was helping people every single day in ways technology never could. The following morning, Grayson returned. Not with reporters. Not with cameras. Not with publicity. He came alone. Over the next several weeks, something remarkable happened. The billionaire helped renovate the repair shop. New equipment arrived. Training programs were introduced. Partnerships with local schools were established. Young people interested in automotive careers received mentorship opportunities. The small garage slowly transformed into a respected community training center. But the greatest change wasn't financial. It was personal. Grayson began spending time with Colton and Harper. He saw how they lived. How they laughed together. How they supported one another despite hardship. For years, Grayson had chased bigger numbers, larger companies, and greater influence. Yet he often felt empty. Watching Colton and Harper revealed something money couldn't buy. Purpose. One afternoon, while visiting the garage, Grayson noticed a framed photograph hanging on the wall. It showed Colton, his late wife, and baby Harper smiling beneath a bright summer sky. The image stopped him. Because despite all the loss, despite all the struggle, Colton still chose kindness. He still chose hope. He still believed people deserved help. That realization affected Grayson more deeply than any business lesson he had ever learned. Months passed. The training center flourished. Dozens of young mechanics found careers. Families benefited from affordable repairs. The neighborhood slowly improved. And every Saturday, Colton still made time for adventures with Harper. Some things never changed. One sunny afternoon, nearly a year after the Bugatti incident, a community celebration was held outside the newly expanded facility. Hundreds attended. Former students shared success stories. Local families expressed gratitude. Children played beneath colorful banners. As Colton stood beside Harper watching the crowd, he realized how much life had changed. Not because he had fixed an expensive car, but because one small act of kindness had opened doors nobody expected. Before we reach the ending, if this story is touching your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and leave a comment. Your support helps meaningful stories reach more people who need a reminder that kindness still matters. Special request: comment below with the words, "Kindness changes lives," if you believe one small act can create a ripple effect that transforms someone's future. As the celebration continued, Grayson stepped onto the stage. Looking across the crowd, he spoke not about technology, wealth, or success. Instead, he spoke about humility. He admitted that the day his Bugatti broke down was the day his perspective changed. The man he assumed had the least to offer ended up teaching him the most important lesson of his life. True greatness isn't measured by what you own. It's measured by how you treat others. The crowd applauded. Harper squeezed her father's hand. Colton smiled quietly. The afternoon sun illuminated the faces of people whose lives had been changed forever. And somewhere in that moment, everyone understood the same truth. Talent doesn't always wear a suit. Wisdom doesn't always come with titles. And sometimes the person capable of solving the biggest problem is the one nobody notices. A struggling single father fixed a billionaire's Bugatti in 5 minutes. But what he really repaired was something far more valuable. A man's understanding of what truly matters. And that lesson continued changing lives long after the engine started. Because kindness, humility, and character are worth more than any luxury car in the world. The Bugatti became a story people remembered. But Colton Reese became a story people never forgot. The end.